the fourth paragraph down, Lori, under that they would no longer be eligible for our plans and would now not.
Okay, we'll fix that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good catch, Liz. Good catch. Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, anything else on the minutes? All right, then all in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next order of business is a presentation from Youth Council. A few months ago, I was contacted, and maybe other council members, from two high school students who live in Kirkwood, Megan Wilcutt and Grace. I apologize, Grace. I think it's Heidi. Correct me if I'm wrong. Megan's at St. Joseph Academy, and Grace is at Coriezu, and they just wanted to throw out the idea of a Kirkwood Youth Council where students from different schools got together and kind of followed the city council, the issues that we're dealing with, meet with us occasionally, and give some input and ideas to us. So Maggie and I talked about it, and I asked Maggie to kind of take this on, and she willingly did, and happily did, I think. And I know since then, and that was a couple months ago, I know Maggie has had more conversations with Grace and Megan. So before the presentation, Maggie, can you say a few words and lead into it?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I've had the honor of working with Grace and Megan on this amazing idea and project for several months. They began the idea, they did the research, they talked with many of us and many others, and they wrote all that you will learn about tonight. Getting high school students from all our Kirkwood high schools involved in government has been a dream of mine since serving on the Human Rights Commission. These amazing women are bringing it to fruition. Megan and Grace.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Welcome.
It's really nice to meet all of you. So like he said, I go to St. Joe, I'm a senior, and I went to St. Peter in Kirkwood, and I've lived here all my life. So I'm really excited to work on this project and talk to you guys about it.
And hi, I'm Grace Hyvey, and I go to Coriezu. I'm also a senior and went to St. Peter in Kirkwood with Megan, which is where I met her. And I actually moved to Kirkwood when I was in 7th grade, so I haven't lived here my whole life, but it is a place that I love calling home now. And we do have a PowerPoint tonight that we would love to share with you guys. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Basically, our idea is that we want to start a Kirkwood Youth City Council. So according to the Census Bureau, 24.6% of the US population is under the age of 18. It goes without saying that young people are the future of our communities. Therefore, it is vitally important that they are vested with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be the next generation of local leaders. Youth councils are an excellent means of doing so because they promote regular and active civic engagement among youth. Youth councils promote civic engagement among youth by giving them a role in local decision-making, offering real-world experiences with elected officials, teaching them about the role of councils, boards, and commissions, increasing youth volunteerism, and providing them with the opportunity to develop very important leadership skills.
So for how we are implementing this, we first got the idea for this council while participating in the YMCA Changemakers program. This program was a 3-month summer virtual institute where each student was encouraged to design an initiative and to be the change that they wish to see in the world. We ultimately decided to pair up in hopes of creating the Kirkwood Youth City Council. As some of you may know, we reached out to the city council members and we appreciate the opportunity that you have given us to Zoom and ask some questions with you prior to this meeting. Your initial and hopefully continued support means everything to us. During those Zoom meetings, we received some very important feedback, and we worked to use that feedback and create a more formal plan for this council. In addition, we have used other youth councils from around the country as models, and we even created our own application for interested students to fill out. Right now, we have 8 students besides ourselves who have filled out the application, which would create a board of 10 students, which is around the number we had been aiming for in the first place. We got the information out by posting on our social media accounts to gain interest, and we also reached out to the local schools around our area to reach even more students, such as Kirkwood High School. We will continue to do this to gain more interest, hopefully in the future, starting next semester. And our future board right now will consist of students in the freshman through senior grade levels. We currently have applications from sophomore through seniors. We have both boys and girls interested, and they come from a wide variety of the St. Louis high schools, including Koryezu, St. Joe, Kirkwood High School, Chaminade, and John Burroughs.
So our plan as of right now is we want to form a group of hopefully 11 or 13 very passionate youth members of Kirkwood. We wanted to make sure it was an odd number in case of any voting that may occur during the meetings. It will be from grades 9 through 12 and come from diverse backgrounds. We currently have the application out, as Gracie said, and have hopeful members very excited about the idea. They keep texting me about it, hoping that it starts soon. Currently, we are just one applicant away from hitting our goal of 11, and we think that we can get that if we continue to persist and keep emailing other schools. So we plan to hold bi-monthly meetings at City Hall. As of right now, Zoom, obviously. We will facilitate these meetings with creative ideas. We want to be able to research and propose our own initiatives to you so that we can make a difference in Kirkwood on the issues teenagers are passionate about. For example, some of the ideas we have started thinking about are campaigns to promote eco-friendly living and conducting a youth forum for all local high school students on topics of concern for youth. We will also want to learn about the impacts of local government that happen on our everyday lives through hearing from people such as yourself. We hope to assist in sparking interest and increase voter turnout in local elections. Also, we want to share self-advocacy tips while making a notable difference in our community. Additionally, we will organize community service opportunities once a month to give back to Kirkwood. Lastly, the council will be able to provide advice to the city council from the perspective of the youth of Kirkwood, voices you don't typically hear from a lot, and hopefully implement our own initiatives in Kirkwood.
What we have given you so far is slightly abstract, and there are many different paths that this can take, and we are super open to all of your input. But we wanted to explain exactly what we kind of foresee the meetings looking like that we would have for this youth council in the near future. We are hopeful that we can get this off the ground and running very soon. And basically, as you can see, our first meeting is a lot of introductions and information so that we can do an orientation for new members, and we share with them our goal and vision for this. We hope that the second meeting can be where we get the ball rolling and catch board members up to speed with our vision. As you can kind of see, we are leaving a lot of room for discussion so that the decisions are collaborative among all board members, and we can bounce ideas off of each other. We will take the ideas from our first few meetings to formulate our plan and how this whole program will look going forward.
So what comes next? We've already had the amazing opportunity to meet and catch up with some of you, but before anything else, we need your approval. After that, we will focus on finalizing the members. We have been in contact with some Kirkwood High School staff, as we said previously, to connect to a larger network of students and make the application pool grow in size and background. Once we have approved and finalized all board members, we will hold meetings virtually until it is safe to meet at City Hall. We can't wait to start making a difference while learning more about the community we live in. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, and we hope to be working with you very soon.
That's great. you know, the two of you, Megan and Grace, from the time we talked, you've obviously, you know, not only put a lot of thought, effort, and work into it, you've really reached out, and I mean, this is basically what you said you wanted to do, and you've got the framework to do it. I think it's really, really, really impressive. Some of the ideas you have are great. Guest speaker from City Hall at your meetings. We've got so many people, council and staff members who love to talk about what they do for the community, whatever department, you know, talk about our electric department, our parks and recreation. I mean, just our planning department, just all the different things that we do that can give the youth council just more and more information on what it is we do as a city. I mean, I think everything you propose to do is fantastic. I know I, for one, will be glad to participate in any way I can. So why don't we open it up to some questions from the council? And Maggie, I'll just start with you, since you, if you have any questions or more comments, since you.
I don't. These two, except for these two young women, are incredibly exciting, and they're incredibly excited about doing this. I also was really pleased to see that they have 10 people interested, or 8 more people interested in being on the youth council, considering how hard it is to. When I talked with Kirkwood High School, they were like, we will do the best we can, but they're not in the buildings. So everything is pretty crazy. And so I was really pleased that we got 4 from Kirkwood High School and from the surrounding high schools.
I forgot to say one thing before we move on. One thing that's what you've done very well is you put a structure to it, because you're seniors. So, you know, come, you know, May, whatever, or whenever, you know, graduation is, you'll move on, and hopefully others you've got, you know, involved will be able to take on leadership roles in that. Do we have any other council comments or questions? I'll just go with raised hands. Liz, Councilmember Gibbons.
Well, congratulations. I think this is a great idea, and you both did such a gracious and marvelous job presenting it to us. I'm just curious about your connection with the YMCA Change Makers. Was that through the Kirkwood Y that you got involved with that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. So Grace and I are actually members of Youth in Government, Missouri Youth in Government, which is it's a program that kind of does mock government at Jefferson City every year for like a 3-day convention, and that's run by the YMCA, like the national corporation. So they reached out to all the youth in government clubs and offered this opportunity this summer to do the Changemakers initiative. So it wasn't through the YMCA Kirkwood directly, but it was like the national YMCA.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other council questions or comments? I see Wallace, Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, ladies, Councilwoman Wirtz and myself, I got to speak with you early on several times, and it was great to communicate with you. And I'm glad you're continuing with this. I would tell you, and oh, by the way, one of my daughters participated in Youth in Government, and it was a great experience for her. So I always encourage people as much as possible to stay involved in that. I would like for you to be a little more aggressive with your recruitment, because I don't think that you have enough depth there with 10. I know it's difficult at this point, although I think that actually the use of virtual communication will probably help you in this, that more folks are accustomed to doing it that way. So if you can reach out, but if you need more assistance out of the government department at the high school, let me know, because I know they're going to be going back to class here next week. And so getting in touch with them and getting them on board, I know the staff up there will be looking for things like this to get their students involved in. So I thank you for that, and good luck with getting this up and moving, and keep us in the loop.
Thank
All
you.
right, Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, Megan and Grace, hi, it's good to see you again. I think you all have turned this into a remarkable program. I think you're going to get more participation anyway. I think students are going to find this out and they're going to want to get involved, especially with the political landscape of 2020. I think you're going to have a lot of folks that are interested in this, and I'm glad that you're doing this during your senior year. It'll be a feather in your caps for you to move forward. So thank you for all your efforts on this.
Very good.
Thank you.
Liz, your hand up? You're muted.
Sorry, I just got a text message from someone who wants to know how they can apply.
Yes.
So right now we have a Google form that I can send you the link if you want.
Okay.
I
If
can
you'll,
actually paste it in the chat right now if you'd want that.
what was that, Megan?
I'm gonna paste it in the chat on Zoom so that you
Okay. Okay, good. They can get it that way then.
Mhm. they
Perfect.
can see this link and they can fill it out. That's
Okay.
awesome. Thank you.
That is awesome.
Very good. That's really,
Great.
really neat. That's good.
There it is.
There you go.
Thanks.
Thank you, Megan.
So what we'll do tonight, it sounds like the best thing is you're still moving forward, but if you'd like us, council, to give, some formal endorsement of the program, we'll, we can take a vote on that, and then that
Yes.
gives you that, and then, you can proceed accordingly. And, again, Maggie will be the, liaison. So when you want to get all this started, what you need from us, Maggie will get it to us. So is there a motion then to endorse the creation of the Kirkwood Youth Council as presented?
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion. Was there a second? Councilmember Ward seconded. Do we have any questions or comments on that?
Mayor, I need to make a comment. I didn't know that there was going to be any motions that are going to be voted on.
Yes.
So in light of that, I need to make mention of the fact that under section 610.015 of the Missouri Sunshine Law, members of the city council who are not physically present in council chambers can participate and vote on all matters when an emergency exists and the nature of the emergency is stated in the minutes. So I'd ask the minutes to reflect. And unfortunately, we continue to be in this pandemic because of COVID-19, and that the council is elected to meet remotely in order to protect the public as well as each other. And that's why we are meeting remotely, and therefore you can vote under the sunshine.
Great, thank you. That's why we have a city attorney, so he can keep us on the straight and narrow. And I forgot about that. Thank you, John. So, all right, any questions or comments on the motion? All right, then, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That motion passes. So you have the endorsement of the city council to move forward. Liz's hand.
Just have a question about the Zoom chat. The person says they can't see it because they're not a panelist. Maybe Freddie can do something that
Yeah.
non-panelists can see the chat.
You know what? I've got an idea on it.
Yeah, let's do something else.
Yeah, I was going to say, Laurie.
Also send a new link because I think I accidentally deleted some a little part of the link on accident when I first sent it. So the new link work also.
Liz, you can also tell whoever that is that they can contact Laurie by calling City Hall, and she's got the information as well. So if for some reason the link doesn't work. So,
Okay.
all right, very good. All right, Megan and Grace, thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you so much for your support of this.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, we'll get ready to move right on to our next topic this evening, and maybe we'll get Jonathan to video in, is really a discussion or clarification on the downtown master plan. And basically, I know recently, and maybe even longer than that, we get a lot of emails, comments regarding the master plan, references to it. I think there's just a lot of, and this is, and I fully understand because I'm the same way sometimes, confusion over what the master plan is. We get a lot of certain proposals are not consistent with the master plan. People see illustrative pages that show certain types of buildings on certain properties and thinking that that's what is supposed to go there. The master plan is not a development plan. And Jonathan, I know you're going to get into this as we talk. It's not a development plan. And illustrations are simply there to show what could be done, but not specifically in those areas. So I just thought, just because we're getting a lot of comments, questions, statements on the master plan, it might be a good idea for us to talk about it a little bit. I know Jonathan sent council an email a couple weeks ago regarding that to try to give some clarification on it. Many will remember that we also right at the end of January, brought back Marina from DPZ, who was really the main author of the plan. And one of the reasons we did that is for an update, but also to clarify the intent of what the plan is supposed to do for Kirkwood. So Jonathan, is that enough of a segue to kind of go into what, your email and what your thoughts? I mean, you're our director of planning services. So you understand this stuff a lot more than I do, and probably most of us do. So if you'd like to maybe start with a little summary, and then we can get into council questions and comments on it.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Mayor. So, I do want to thank the Mayor and the council for the opportunity to come before you all tonight and discuss something that's really important to me in my role in the city, and I know it's important to the community as well. Just kind of refresher for those at the meeting and maybe the public in attendance too. So I'm the director of planning and development services here at the city, and so I'm a professional certified planner that the city's hired on staff. And part of planners' roles for communities is really to work with the community. And there's a lot of roles that we play, right, like everybody, but one of those is to help the community formulate their goals and objectives and vision and how they want the community, in this case, really to develop, right? This is, I feel, I'm happy and excited to be working at Kirkwood in a community that does put value in and does take goes through the exercise of doing these planning documents and these studies, because there are many communities who either can't do it, don't do it, or just aren't on the same page with it. And it is it's a great step to be in a community or that puts such importance and such belief in these types of planning processes, and they are very important. So with that said, from my professional role, I'm going to be making a few comments tonight. I do not advocate for any specific projects, but part of my role also is actually my position as economic development with the city, right? And so economic vitality and economic activity, as you all know, is crucial for communities to continue to provide services, to continue to provide just activity and resources for their residents. So, it was identified. We've done a lot of long range planning in the past 5 or 6 years. It really was kicked off with our pedestrian bicycle plan was first, and then our comprehensive plan. And a lot of the goals that came out of that, and one of the things identified in the comprehensive plan were certain sub area or smaller district plans, and the downtown was one of those. And a lot of the goals and visions, both in the comprehensive plan and our downtown plan, are really geared towards making downtown more successful, building on the success that is there. And to do that, we have to really capture the development momentum that's happening in the region, right? As much as people hate to admit it, there are many municipalities who are jockeying and vying for residential development and commercial development. And so one of the things that community members, council members, everyone started to see is, well, we have a good amount of surface parking, right? Of open area, underutilized area. There's a lot of potential in downtown that people I can easily see. And so the idea that these plans came from was, well, let's get a plan let's get a vision, let's get something that will show us what can happen in a way that will make us more successful going forward. So I served, well, before I go into that, I do want to say, so wanting to capture some of the positive development momentum that is occurring elsewhere in the region. And when we look at other examples around the region, because that's what people do, right? You look at best practices, you look at what's happening, but just looking at those examples and wanting to capture momentum that's happening in other places, it will not turn us into those places, right? We are still Kirkwood. We will do things that Kirkwood and the community wants to do in their way. But we are in a sort of competition to get this activity that we want to. So I served as the project manager for both our downtown master plan and our downtown commercial market analysis that were conducted over the past couple of years. And I feel that I have a very intimate knowledge of how these documents were drafted and the information that they captured. I attended the numerous public meetings, charrettes, small group meetings, discussions, presentations, reviewed the documents, reviewed the drafts, all that. So so the information that I'm presenting tonight is just to try to provide that context of what, in my professional opinion, what these goals, what these plans are intending to say, and what the community has provided, the input the community has provided through these planning processes. So let's see. The mayor mentioned one of the things, so these plans, he mentioned some things that the plans are not. It is not a development plan, right? Is it a vision plan? It's not to say that these things have to happen. The other thing that I want to mention to that effect is that the plans are also not our code, right? Our code is in place, and that's what the regulation we have. Now, it is in working in a community that is wanting to generate interest, wanting to generate economic activity, and wanting to have these development interest in the community, it is very healthy and normal to expect that developers or property owners or homeowners are going to come to us and ask questions or ask for something that's not in the code. And it is impossible for a code to be written in a way that will anticipate future future trends in development, future ideas, everything changes, technology, everything changes constantly. And so just the mere fact that a proposal does not meet our code does not mean it's bad. And the fact that the city is considering it does not mean that's bad, right? These are all things that are in the normal realm of planning and development and zoning. So, but these plans are not our code. They are meant to guide our code. Some of the plans provided clear recommendations on code changes that could be made. We've implemented some of those and are still in the process of others. But again, evaluating the code and looking at amendments and considering them, right? Not saying you have to pass all of them, but considering them is a good thing for a community that wants to remain relevant and wants to remain competitive in a development sense. So with that, I think one of the biggest overarching themes from the downtown master plan and the commercial market assessment really was quickly identified the need to increase density in our downtown, and that actually came from our comprehensive plan as well. This is something that kind of has spurred my correspondence with the council on this and making sure that I'm able to express my opinion as a city's planner, and then also answer any questions that you all might have on this. But one example that's been put out there is there's a one statement in the code that says recommends to target densities of 15 to 25 dwelling units per acre, and it's recommended, and that's been quoted multiple times. However, if you really look at the context, that's preceded by a phrase that says, depending on the exact location within the corridor and the type of housing product. So that density of 15 to 25 dwelling units per acre is actually less density than our code allows now, and it's less density than the code allowed when this plan was written. So you really need to look at these things. In that recommendation was saying those densities might be good on certain contexts, but overall, I am confident in saying that the recommendations from our comprehensive plan and these downtown plans was for increased density, residential density, in our downtown. And the commercial market analysis really built on that very well in playing out the need to have, when you want a successful downtown, you need to have, I don't want to say 24-hour use to scare people, not 24-hour commercial use, but you want to have people there. You want to have people living there because you don't want it to be a 9-to-5 center, right? You want people there working during the day. You want people there in the evening, and then people there overnight. That's the healthiest time when you have that activity. And you want people there on the weekends as well. So you want all those different modes of or timing of activity, and that was the focus on the downtown market analysis as well. So let's see. So with all that, I guess, just what I want to make sure the council is clear on and the community is clear on is that while there was a focus on missing middle housing in the downtown market plan, the downtown master plan specifically, that was not the only recommendation, and it was not intended to, the plan was not intended to say that is the only housing that should develop in downtown. Approving larger multifamily buildings does not contradict or violate the downtown master plan, right? Those are all types of developments that were discussed and were concepts that were discussed in the planning process and were part of the recommendations. And these larger multifamily buildings, they don't violate our code either, right? And I won't go too much into the detail list, but a few years ago we added a modification process in our code, which many communities have similar provisions to allow some flexibility within the code, because again, you try your best to make the code into something that regulates things to get to a form that you want. However, you can never anticipate everything. And when there's a great project that you really think is wonderful, but maybe it just doesn't meet one thing, or it can give you a lot of benefits and it doesn't meet, XYZ, many communities still want the ability to consider and to review those projects and not just have them, turned away at the start. So we have those flexibility provisions, those modification provisions in our code. So really, these items that are requesting modifications, they don't violate our code either, right? Let's see. It was mentioned, the mayor mentioned that Marina, the principal with DPZ, who did our downtown master plan, was brought back in January. And again, this is, we did bring her back because it was a little time since the plan was finalized, and we tried to bring a refresher and kind of refocus everyone on the intent. And in speaking of larger buildings, again, at that time, we did have early concepts of the two pending multifamily projects. And again, I'm not here to advocate for any specific project, but my point is, Marina knew at that time the general numbers, that they would be over 300 units between two developments, and she knew the locations. And she highlighted that in her presentation as a success of the plan, as something that is achieving the plan. So, I think that provided a pretty clear opinion from the consultant who authored the plan as well. The mayor touched on this too. There is a portion of the plan that is the illustrative or illustrative plan. And there are many components to the plan. That portion of it garners a lot of attention. It's pretty pictures. There's a lot of good renderings throughout. The illustrative plan is about 9 pages of a 183-page document. So I just remind everybody that that is one piece of a larger plan, and that the intent was not to say all of downtown should develop how this picture shows, right? It was just, as the mayor said, it was just to indicate that this is how you could achieve certain things that really we aren't seeing in Kirkwood right now. That was the big difference is, we had seen some larger multifamily, so they didn't focus on that. And this is what they presented. They didn't focus on things that they had seen, that Kirkwood had seen in the past. We weren't seeing the smaller development, multifamily, 12 units and under. So they focused a lot on recommendations so that our code would not preclude those things from happening. But again, not saying that the larger developments should not happen or would not be beneficial to the community. I probably talked too long. I will stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think it's very important to, to say that the staff, whether it's Jonathan or whomever, is not here to advocate for or against proposals. When someone makes an application of any sort, we don't want whether it's Jonathan or someone in the city say, oh no, you can't, the council won't approve that, or that you can't do that. I mean, that's their right to make a proposal. And what's really been good the last few years, 4 or 5 years, in many cases, instead of having the homeowner, or excuse me, the property owner or the developer make the initial presentation to the council, that ended up posing problems just with trying to, with code items and everything. So what we do now is, Jonathan and his department basically put the application together, and they make the presentation to planning and zoning and city council. So oftentimes we'll hear, why is the city considering this, or whatever it might be. It's, well, the point blank answer is we have to. And we also want to get the best presentation we can get for planning and zoning and for us. So the best way to do that is to have our objective staff members who are experts in this make that initial presentation. So you notice with every public hearing, we'll have Jonathan make the presentation, and then after that, the applicant can make any presentation, comments, or add to it. So, I mean, we are very, very lucky that we can do it. We can do it that way. So the other thing was, again, we all hear, and again, I'll read things and not quite understand. We're hearing a lot that this doesn't meet the master plan, that it will help create more parking problems in Kirkwood. And you read the master plan and it says we don't have a parking problem. So the point is, we all have our ideas and perceptions, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. I just think it was important in these, because of all we have going on right now, is that we hear from a professional planner's perspective of what these plans are, and how they really relate or don't relate to the master plan. Ultimately, with any proposal, it's ultimately up to us to decide if we want to approve it or not. But I think it's just important we have our professional staff give us their opinions on how it relates to the plans we have. So, do we have any council comments or questions on this? I bet there's any hands go up. I'll go in order of what we have for tonight. So we'll go, Mark, Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And Jonathan, thank you for this memo. This really gives a lot of great information. And you and I had a good conversation about the downtown master plan and development. And I think you're right. And it's important for our residents to know that, something like the missing middle is not the only answer. And not all large developments are bad, and that it's important that these consultants who have consulted for cities around the world have seen that Kirkwood may be missing an opportunity, and that if we increase our density in our downtown area, that we will drive more sales in our special business district downtown. So it's very important that we approach these proposals with open minds, and that we recognize that we have a unique opportunity to take advantage of development in the St. Louis area, as you mentioned tonight. So I think it's important that, reading the memo and reading this information, that we have an open mind and that we do take a look at this objectively. Not to say that we will approve everything, but if we go in with an objective, open mind and we consider these things, using these documents as our guide, we'll make good decisions about this. So thank you, Jonathan, for this reminder. And the DPZ presentation was great when Marina was here both times, and she made a lot of good points. But again, it was not intended to say, this is exactly what we have to do. That's up to us. But using this information, going in objectively, we'll make good decisions for our city. So thank you, Jonathan, for this information.
My pleasure.
Wallace, you're next on the list.
Yeah, goes without saying, I'm always grateful for Jonathan's presence and his skills that he provides for the city. For me, I think the problem is not the edification of the 7 members of the council. It's the community. We've done a less than stellar job of reducing the amount of confusion that's out there. We have our existing code, zoning ordinances. We have the recommendations and the goals in the 13-year, 2035 plan. And then we have the work that was done by the subcommittee that's been submitted, but we haven't had a chance to deal with. So there's a lot of things out there that are floating around for the community. And even when we have a single issue out there, it's difficult sometimes to get facts out there. But one that's this complex is very difficult. And I think we just really need to really concentrate on informing the community, one, what's at stake here for the future of Kirkwood in terms of development, and then 2, what choices are we gonna land on as a community for our not only our downtown but also our residential areas of the city. So that's it.
Thanks,
for me.
Wallace. Liz, any comments, questions?
Yes, Jonathan, you said that there's a lot of activity going on in the St. Louis region, lots of examples that we should follow. Could you give me a couple of those examples?
I didn't bring, the clearest ones, I didn't bring them with you. I've given presentations in the past to the council it was focused mostly on mixed use development that's happening. There's a number of things happening around, the Central West End, South Grand, these popular Delmar Loop area.
Richmond Heights, Soulard.
Yeah, and even other suburbs. There was just one at, what's the one at 141 in Big Bend? That's a more suburban type, but it's a larger mixed use project in Twin Oaks, is it? I think, but there's, and again, the intent of that, or the reason for bringing those up is not that any development we have has to be exactly like theirs, but it's just to show that developers are ready to do mixed use development, and they are doing it in other regions. So the task that we were given was, what are things that we could do to try to attract them to Kirkwood.
One of the things that Marina said when she was in here, that the question came up about traffic. And her answer was, you'll learn to live with it. And that's one thing that I keep hearing from our residents, that they feel the traffic is not, pretty bad right now. Of course, not during the pandemic, but is there something else that could be said with regards to traffic that might be a little more palatable than you'll learn to live with it?
Well, so DPZ they were not tasked. I think Marina may have been caught off guard a little bit. They were not tasked with doing any transportation. They did a parking study, and that was actually done by their subconsultant, Jacobs Engineering. So the parking study, no transportation traffic analysis was part of their downtown plan. However, when there is any substantial proposed increase in density or activity, the city requires traffic studies to be conducted with those projects, right? And I think it is very important, and I don't say this lightly, is that those studies are empirical data. I understand the nature is to be skeptical of things, and that's fine. However, these are done by professional engineers, certified, and the city is involved in the scoping of those projects, which means we identify what we want them to look at. You know, if you start to question the integrity of professionals and their ability to provide empirical data, you know, I think we're in a bigger world of hurt in a lot of respects. So the city, the best tool that we have is to require those studies to be done, and for our staff to evaluate those studies. If there are inconsistencies, then we work through those. But you know, there's people have to keep in mind that we're talking about a lot of things that do end up competing as well. If we want to focus on pedestrian safety and slowing traffic down downtown and slowing people down for a pedestrians type area, that will slow people down. That will create a little more congestion. But that is the nature of the beast. If you want a successful pedestrian oriented downtown, as opposed to a Manchester Road, auto-centric, just drive by as fast as you can, you know, grab your things and go.
So the traffic engineers are chosen by the developer, is that correct?
The individual firm is chosen by the developer. That's correct.
I mean, does the city council have any say as to who's used or
No.
what have you?
No.
Okay. And as far as density goes in downtown, I mean, is there a study on how much is too much, how much isn't enough? Where does that fall?
Sure. So no, there is no study because that question has to be determined by the individual community, right? There are people who live in various communities for various reasons, and each community answers that question differently. You can travel around. I mean, there's basic information that I provided to the council in the past, and I'm going to be happy to do it again, of, you know, providing, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but, you know, so roughly our density requirement of 1,200, we do things a little inverse with our code currently. And so the 1,200 square feet of lot area per unit, if I do this off the top of my head, that's roughly, I want to say 36 units per acre. Most communities look at units per acre, right? And you can get everything from a strict urban context to a very ex-urban, you know, the extreme of suburban context. And communities all within that spectrum will have everything from, you know, 12 units per acre or less, maybe, you know, 1 unit per acre, even for 1 acre housing. But, you know, but you can get ex-urban and suburban communities that have, you know, 70, 80 dwelling units per acre. And it's just based on the context, based on what type of development they want in that location. So it really is. And that's why even with the DPZ presentations, they recommended for us to achieve some things that we wanted, we really should look at increasing the residential density downtown. But they didn't give an exact number. You know, they didn't say decrease it from 1,200 square feet per lot area per unit to 1,000 or 800 or 600. You know, they said that is that's a local decision, much like height. They gave some recommendations on height, but they said ultimately that's the community's decision. But you do have to know the ramifications of those, right? If we've had the density we have now for a while, and we have not had development in downtown in a while, you know, so those are the ramifications, right? And if that's important enough for the community to keep the regulations where they are today, knowing that it's the most likely result is we will have the development we have today. And the study showed, you know, the 5 years prior to our study, we were getting 12 residential units in 5 years. So, you know, if you want to get 12 residential units every 5 years, we can keep things the way they are, and then that's what we'll have.
What do you, I mean, is there a way of figuring out what the road system can handle? I mean, that would help drive decisions on
Sure.
what's.
So, I mean, I see Bill's on there. I won't defer to Bill right now. Yeah, I'm sure there is a a downtown wide traffic analysis that could be done. However, and Bill can correct me, that the grid pattern and the development type that we have, I would imagine that any study is going to say our capacity is on a system wide is pretty high. I don't know, Bill, would you disagree or want to add anything on that?
I agree with most of what you're saying, is that if we have never done a capacity study for our roads, okay? But a typical one single lane road can handle up to a 20,000 vehicles per day capacity, okay? When we talked about the downtown area in particular and the traffic down there, we also have to remember, some of the things that we're talking about, these pedestrian improvements. We could probably get more cars through downtown and have less congestion if we had less traffic signals and if the speed limit was slightly increased. But we're talking about just the opposite. We're going to be causing more. We want to slow down our traffic. We're going to cause more congestion regardless of development because we want to lower our speed limits. We want longer pedestrian crossing times. Those have more impact on congestion than development does. So you have to take a look at, you have competing priorities. You want to be pedestrian friendly, but you don't want congestion. Well, you can't have both of those because they compete against each other. You can have one or the other. Okay, so you have to find what that fair balance is and what you're willing to do, because most transportation studies that we've seen so far from the consultants show that we have excess capacity on our road systems because they don't show any significant congestion problems when we're adding 100 extra vehicles a day at a certain location or 250 cars a day at a certain location. That barely impacts the capacity of that whole road system. So you really have to look at the way the road's being used and how we want it to be used more than the development itself, because they're not adding at this time a huge amount of added congestion to our roadway system.
So could I make a suggestion, Mayor?
Sure.
Jonathan, if you could provide Liz with copies of the submissions and the work product from the steering subcommittee. I don't think there was a question that wasn't asked and answered out of all of that work. Now she's going to have a stack of paper or a thumb drive or a very heavy thumb drive, but I think that would be the best way for her to get kind of caught up.
You're talking about the steering committee for the code, the Kirkwood by Design code project, right? Yeah, I can certainly, I might have to ask you again what exactly that. There's a lot of things that we did in that. So yeah, but I'll do what I can. Sure.
Yeah. Well, my guess is you can't give her too much.
I don't know, Wallace. Even this whole, book that he gave us is a lot to absorb. But I just have one other observation, that in looking at this, I think there's like 80 acres that have been identified for development in downtown. And if they were developed like the two that we've been discussing recently, we'd be looking at 6,000 units. That's just units. That's not. So I mean, I just think that there's a lot to consider here with everything that's been presented. So
I mean, there's a lot of time. I mean, in the time that it would take to develop 80 acres, there is a lot of time for the city to evaluate, adjust, and there is obviously going to be some saturation point for developments like this. There's we hope because the market would drive some office buildings and some things to provide the mixture. But if it happen to get to a case where we're only seeing 100 plus multifamily units, it would not be it would be fairly easy for us to put a pause on things and reevaluate and see what we need to do. I mean, that is important for communities to do regularly. But the inverse of that is you don't want to do that prematurely and stifle everything, right?
Well, I know Wallace is ready for me to be quiet, and I'm almost there, Wallace. Just one last, just like an observation or whatever. I'm very concerned about houses that may be affected by major developments. I don't know if that was, it had to have been considered. And again, I'm coming in late at the game, I know, on this, but I think that's something that is of concern to me. So I'll be quiet now.
You don't have to be quiet. Gosh, not at all. That's why we're here to talk. We can come back through. Maggie. Maggie, unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
I think I'm going to pass at the moment.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to pass at the moment.
Okay. All right. Russ, do you have anything to add? You're a planner by trade as well.
Yes, in my deep past, I at one time was a planner. Really, the only thing I would like to add is downtown Kirkwood is what the council makes it. And right now, council has made downtown Kirkwood, when we talk about transportation particularly, it's a traffic calming device, because you basically have Lindbergh coming down at 4 lanes. And then somewhere along the way, council said, we're going to put parking on Kirkwood Road, and people can park on both sides, and that eliminates 2 of those lanes. So naturally, at Adams, where you lose that lane, there is always going to be some level of congestion. But what that does is it actually slows the traffic down and makes Kirkwood a much safer place for pedestrians. Because if it were 4 lanes going through downtown, just like it's 4 lanes going through Frontenac or Manchester or whatever, you'd have cars doing 45 miles an hour through your downtown trying to get from Frontenac to Sunset Hills, because a lot of that traffic isn't necessarily local. So I think that downtown Kirkwood acts very well as a traffic calming measure, and it's a Vision Zero type of thing that was installed incrementally over 100 years. And, it's effective. So when folks say, wow, it's just going to add to the congestion, well, the question is, what do you want to do to limit that? Do you want to speed traffic up, or do you want to stifle all development? Those are things that are choices of council. So I think Jonathan's just brought up some interesting thought processes that are useful when we're faced with development plans. And with regard to the limit or the saturation of density, let's put it that way, over 80 acres of downtown that is what I would call underutilized property that is ripe for development. City Council, again, holds the keys on that. City Council would review each one of those as they come along, just as these 2 that are going to be coming before you in the next few weeks or, tonight. You hold the keys, and, there is absolutely a pros and cons analysis that needs to be completed. Obviously, there is some impact to neighbors when an apartment complex goes in, and certainly those neighbors are rightly concerned. But there are certainly also measures that can be taken with any development where commercial abuts residential that can minimize the impact. Obviously council has been expert at working within those parameters over the years. We've all had the discussion about site-proof fences and assorted other buffer type activities or measures. But, in the case of what's proposed or what would be proposed if we're talking about higher density in the future, yeah, you have to take into account the good of the overall community, supporting downtown businesses versus the impact of immediate adjacent neighbors. And that's, again, it's a council consideration. It's very important. It's part of planning. But it's important to keep things in perspective as well. When you're talking about the investment that comes from some of the dollars that we brought in, economic development and so forth, into the downtown area and help support local businesses and add to amenities that your current residents enjoy, and not just the residents that are adjacent to downtown, but the residents throughout the city who come to downtown, and becoming more of a magnet for people around the area to come to eat and have enjoyable walks and things along those lines. There are certain types of amenities that contribute to that. And mixed use, we're talking about mixed use, which is typically commercial on the lower level, at least some portion of a street frontage being commercial, could add restaurants, boutique stores, things that add to the ambiance of downtown. And I think that's evidenced with the Kirkwood Station development right across from City Hall. I think a lot of people appreciate that there is a plaza there and that there are some nice restaurants and you can sit out and enjoy that. So, those are the types of amenities that give you a nice feeling when you visit downtown and attract people to the city. And they also contribute to the tax base and help keep property taxes low over the long run. So those are just things to consider. Since I was asked, those are the things that I would consider if I were sitting in your shoes.
Russ. And I inadvertently went out of order for tonight. And Bob, you're next.
All right. I just want to make a couple of remarks, really. I agree with almost everything everybody said, so I won't repeat those. Just, I think it's important that we get this information pushed out to the public. These explanations, I guess, pushed out to the public in general in some fashion, because it does, I think, create a lot of anxiety when the perception is that council is just freewheeling and violating all kinds of codes, when really we're not. We're holding to those codes for the most part, those limitations for the most part. And then there's some things that we don't have any flexibility on that do bind us. And we obviously we have to follow those. But there's other things that do not bind the council or the city in these decision-making and these proposals. And we need to be, I think, flexible. We saw an example of it in our discussion with the site-proof fencing and things, and we were flexible enough to give the neighbors of the UMB project what they wanted, where if we were to have stuck strictly, we might not have been able to. So, that I just think it creates anxiety among people if they have the wrong idea about what it is what direction or where we are bound and where we're not bound.
Thank you, Bob. John, do you have anything to add from your perspective on this?
No, I really don't have anything to add. I appreciate you asking. I mean, I am not a city planner. I'm obviously the city attorney, and building upon what Bob Sears just mentioned, I hope that all of you understand and all of the citizens understand that if in fact a proposal violates the code, it wouldn't get to you. Staff's job is to make sure that we totally vet a project, and the code has been designed over the years to provide the city council with some degree of flexibility. If in fact it was a hard and fast rule, as long as I've been with the city, we'd be stuck in the 60s or the 70s. Obviously things have evolved, and that's the point I think that the citizens don't truly appreciate in some instances. There are a few hard and fast rules, but most of these rules over the years have been amended or adopted to allow this city council or the elected leaders to exercise their discretion.
John, any last questions or comments from anyone? All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you very much. I'm glad we did that. We did this so that you could, elaborate a bit. It is complicated stuff, at least for people like me. And it's just nice to have, it's great to have professional staff. Obviously, there'll be more discussions on this as time goes on. And one thing that was mentioned earlier, the code review that was done last year. In the near future, we are going to, get back to that. There's already discussions about doing that. So it was put on the back burner like a lot of things, but we will soon be getting back to that. So thank you, Jonathan, Bill, Russ, John, for your comments. And Laurie, we have no further business for the work session, do we?
No, we do not.
No, very good. Well, with that, we will adjourn and come back for our regular meeting at 7. And I've asked council to get back in the meeting at least by about 5 till, so we can start right at 7. Thank you all.
Recycling can be a simple thing that has a big impact on all of us. Republic Services can help you make a difference in your community with these quick and easy tips to becoming a better recycler. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. First, know what to throw. You should always recycle paper and flattened cardboard, metal cans and plastic bottles and jugs with the lids on. Things like construction materials, yard waste, and greasy pizza boxes are not recyclable. Here are some common household items that are mistaken for recyclables. These items can contaminate or interfere with the recycling process. When in doubt, throw it out. Now that you know what to recycle, it's time to make sure it's properly prepared. Recyclables should be empty, clean of all food and liquids, and dry before you place them in your recycling container. The last step is the easiest. Never bag or bundle your recyclables. Placing each item in the container individually allows us to sort recyclables faster and more efficiently. This will ensure they become quality materials that can be turned into useful new products. By following these 3 simple steps, know what to throw, empty, clean, dry, and don't bag it. You can help eliminate contamination and minimize the amount of recyclable material that goes into a landfill. Together, we can make a difference in our homes, our communities, and our world. Learn more on how to become a better recycler at recyclingsimplified.com. Recycling can be a simple thing that has a big impact on all of us. Republic Services can help you make a difference in your community with these quick and easy tips to becoming a better recycler. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. First, know what to throw. You should always recycle paper and flattened cardboard, metal cans and plastic bottles and jugs with the lids on. Things like construction materials, yard waste, and greasy pizza boxes are not recyclable. Here are some common household items that are mistaken for recyclables. These items can contaminate or interfere with the recycling process. When in doubt, throw it out. Now that you know what to recycle, it's time to make sure it's properly prepared. Recyclables should be empty, clean of all food and liquids, and dry before you place them in your recycling container. The last step is the easiest. Never bag or bundle your recyclables. Placing each item in the container individually allows us to sort recyclables faster and more efficiently. This will ensure they become quality materials that can be turned into useful new products. By following these 3 simple steps, know what to throw, empty, clean, dry, and don't bag it. You can help eliminate contamination and minimize the amount of recyclable material that goes into a landfill. Together, we can make a difference in our homes, our communities, and our world. Learn more on how to become a better recycler at recyclingsimplified.com. Recycling can be a simple thing that has a big impact on all of us. Republic Services can help you make a difference in your community with these quick and easy tips to becoming a better recycler. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. First, know what to throw. You should always recycle paper and flattened cardboard, metal cans, and plastic bottles and jugs with the lids on. Things like construction materials, yard waste, and greasy pizza boxes are not recyclable. Here are some common household items that are mistaken for recyclables. These items can contaminate or interfere with the recycling process. When in doubt, throw it out. Now that you know what to recycle, it's time to make sure it's properly prepared. Recyclables should be empty, clean of all food and liquids, and dry before you place them in your recycling container. The last step is the easiest. Never bag or bundle your recyclables. Placing each item in the container individually allows us to sort recyclables faster and more efficiently. This will ensure they become quality materials that can be turned into useful new products. By following these 3 simple steps, know what to throw, empty, clean, dry, and don't bag it. You can help eliminate contamination and minimize the amount of recyclable material that goes into a landfill. Together, we can make a difference in our homes, our communities, and our world. Learn more on how to become a better recycler.
Mark. A roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Wertz is absent, Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey.
Here.
Thank you. And then I'd like to ask City Attorney John Hessel to put in the minutes sunshine law requirements during a pandemic.
Will do, Mayor. As I've mentioned far too many times now, Section 610.015 of the Missouri Sunshine Law provides members of the City Council who are not physically present in the council chambers can participate and vote on all matters when an emergency exists, and the nature of the emergency must be stated in the minutes. So again, I would ask that the minutes reflect that unfortunately we are continuing in this pandemic with COVID-19, that the City Council is meeting remotely to avoid the spread of the coronavirus, to protect each other as well as the public health and safety of everyone. So let the minutes reflect that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We do have one presentation. It's a proclamation to Horizon St. Louis in Kirkwood. And I think we have with us Lakeisha Robinson, the Executive Director. Hello, Lakeisha. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Excited to be here.
Great. Nice to see you. I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Lori is going to actually put, I think she's going to put it up on the screen. The official one.
Just trying to find it here real quick.
Okay.
All right. All right, hopefully. There we go.
There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and read that. Whereas Horizon St. Louis and Kirkwood, formerly known as Sprague Inc., has been transforming the lives of our area's underserved youth since 1970, and Sprague's recent affiliation with Horizons National has provided significant resources to enable the program to achieve its ambitious mission. Horizon St. Louis and Kirkwood has collaborated with the Kirkwood School District to focus on moderating students' traditional summer slide and is better positioned to inspire brighter futures for students most in need by providing opportunities to experience high-quality academics, engaging enrichment activities, and healthy life skills. Horizon St. Louis and Kirkwood has re-energized and expanded its commitment to remaining an integral part of our community. Now, therefore, I, Timothy E. Griffin, Mayor of the City of Kirkwood, on behalf of the Kirkwood City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of October 18, 2020 as Horizons St. Louis and Kirkwood Week, and encourage academic, business, civic, and community leaders to mark this week through a program, project, or outreach that raises funds or awareness of Horizon St. Louis in Kirkwood. Lakeisha, would you like to say just a couple words?
Absolutely. We are so excited, so humbled to receive this, especially in a year like this, being our 50th year. It's just amazing. So we are so excited for that. I want to thank the mayor and Kirkwood Electric for your support. And the whole community has truly shown up. It's really shown out for our kids. And I have no doubt within the next 50 years, we're definitely going to be able to close these educational gaps within our community. So I'm so excited and thank you all so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Lakeisha. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on with us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Now we will move on. We have a public hearing this evening, which is a request for a site plan for a 12-unit, 4-story residential building on the combined properties of 134 and 138 West Madison Avenue. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter any exhibits into the record?
I would, Mayor. I would offer as Exhibit 1 the affidavit of publication verifying that notice of this public hearing appeared in the St. Louis County and Exhibit 2 is an affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the Webster Kirkwood Times. Isn't it nice to say that?
Yes.
3 is the viewer map showing the location of the property as well as the surrounding properties. Exhibit 4 is a list of property owners to whom notice of this hearing has been sent. Exhibit 5 is the report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated September 17, 2020, in which the commission recommended approval of the site plan for a 12-unit, 4-story residential building on the combined properties of 134 and 138 West Madison Avenue. Exhibit 6 is the report of the subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated September 16, 2020. And Exhibit 7 is the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. And before we turn it over to Jonathan to make the presentation, I would just like to remind all the people, residents watching, that this is a legally required public hearing on this. There will be no council vote on this tonight. You won't hear from council if they're in support or opposed to this. This is an opportunity to ask questions. Some will ask a lot of questions, some may ask none. That does not indicate their support or opposition to this. So with that, Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the City Council?
That'll be Planning and Services Director Jonathan Raish.
Welcome, Jonathan.
I just realized I was muted. Sorry about that. All right, can you all see the presentation slides?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
sorry about that. All right, thank you. So this is the public hearing for a site plan review, multifamily building, 12-unit multifamily building, as mentioned, on the combined properties of 134 and 138 West Madison Avenue. This is the subject site. It's approximately 13,500 square feet on the south side of Madison Avenue, near the intersection of Clay. I'll show a few more. This is another view looking southward, actually, and these aerial photos are pretty up to date, but still outdated. But you see the first Madison Avenue building there under construction. The parking lot still as dirt in the photo on the left here. But this is again looking towards the south. The subject site has the pin in it there, so it's the two buildings at 134, 138, and then as you all see in the photos here, this is the subject site. The two buildings, the blue building and the beige building, tan building, and you'll note the aerial photo I mentioned being out of date, as you can tell, because I'm sure you're all aware the adjacent 14-unit, 4-story multifamily building right next door to this one is up, and these pictures are already outdated also. But we're talking about the site directly adjacent to the one under construction, south of the police station, City Hall, next to the public lot. So again, this is for a multifamily in the B2 district. Under certain circumstances is a permitted use, and I'll show a slide on that as well. But this is permitted use in multifamily development. So we're talking about site plan review, and the most relevant considerations for the council is that to determine whether the proposed site plan meets the various site development standards, like buffering, landscaping, parking, lighting, etc. But also, I'd like to call out for everyone's benefit to remember that the council does have the ability, it's written into our code, not going against the code, but written into the code, that the council has the ability to modify requirements, certain requirements, according to section A 220.2, and that will be relevant. I have a slide on that as it pertains specifically to this proposal as well. But those are all proper considerations within the provisions of our code. We also have general criteria listed in section A 220.7. All right, moving on. This is what I wanted to show as far as permitted uses. So the red star towards the middle left side of this diagram, this slide, you can see my cursor here. This is the subject site roughly, and what I wanted to show here is that multifamily development without commercial is a permitted use in the downtown B2 district, so long as it is not located on a street that is identified as suggested or mandatory commercial in our downtown master plan framework plan. And that mouthful is just to say that if the subject site is not on one of these red lined properties, then they do not need commercial as part of their proposal. So this project is not cited on one of those streets, and it does not require commercial. So it is available as a permitted use for for multifamily residential. This is a look at the proposed site plan. Let's see. Oh, okay, yes. So this plan, it's the subject site, the two properties, they are, if you can see my cursor again, they are towards the left of the screen, and I'll explain the reason why it goes out further east in a moment here. But again, what you see here is the floor plan, and this is actually the first floor, which is the structured parking, 24 structured parking spaces that are proposed on the ground level, lower level. It does go down. It's has a proposed on the left side of the screen, which would be the west side of the development. What they're proposing is a shared drive with the Barclay, the development that's under construction now, to the west. So there would be a 24-foot wide shared driveway that would serve both this proposed project and the one under construction. And it would go down, slightly downgrade to the lower entrance of this into the parking garage. And once you get to the end of the drive, you could either go right into the Barclay or left into this proposed development if approved. But the parking here, it's the parking sizes and number does meet the minimum requirements of our code. We require 1.5 spaces, so they exceed that requirement for they're providing 2 spaces per unit. Let's see. So I mentioned it's a 13,500 square foot lot. They're proposing 12 units in 4 stories. And I'll see if I can show, that's the landscape. Before I go into landscaping, the makeup, the floor plan of the building is such that there would be 4 units on the first and second floor. And then the third and fourth floors would each have larger 2 units each and larger units. And you'll see in the elevations provided that I'll show later, the building steps back as it goes up, which dictates some of the size of the units as well. And that's well, I'll go through those architectural reasons too, and I'm sure the applicant will elaborate on those. But so we're talking about 4 stories, 12 units, total height of 50 feet, 10.5 inches. And square footage, total residential square footage of just over 34,700, which is a floor area ratio of 2.57. And I'll talk about that a little bit here later too. The proposed landscape plan for this development is shown here on the slide. What we have proposed for consideration is the 4 street trees they are required and they are shown as provided on Madison. They also have 2 additional understory trees that go above and beyond what our minimum requirements of our code that are shown at the front of the building. They have 10 additional evergreen trees along the south property line that are also above and beyond the minimum requirements of our code. And then they have various shrubs and plants along the north and the eastern portion. So this orientation of this slide, I'm sorry, north is left. So you have Madison Avenue on the left here, and the eastern or the top of the slide is the city-owned public parking lot there. So along with these, to accommodate the proposed building, there is a proposed removal of 2 existing street trees that are both calorie pairs, and they've already actually received approval from the city to remove those street trees, and they would be replacing the 2 due to their condition and species. They would be replacing those 2 with the 4 trees you see here. All right, here's a look at their black and white line drawing elevations. And the slide here shows the southern and northern elevations. So the elevation looking from Madison Avenue, and then the elevation opposite that. And what these actually show, just for some reference again, the top is the south elevation. And the darker line building on the right of the top portion is the subject property. The more subdued, grayed out elevation on the left is actually the Barclay, which is under construction now, already approved under construction. So they wanted to show the correlation of these two buildings. And I'm sure they'll go into this, but they see these as what they call, I think, sister buildings, and a lot of similarities in design and sharing, shared drive, a lot of commonality. So they wanted to show how these two would relate in terms of bulk and size. And so you have the southern elevation, the back elevation on the top, the front elevation of this building along Madison Avenue on the bottom there. And then you can see it a little bit, the step back that I mentioned. I think it'll be better to see, easier to see here on these next elevations. So these are the east and west elevations. Again, I'll just pick the bottom. The west elevation you see here, this would be the left side of the screen is the facade facing Madison. So you see the main entrance here, if you can see my cursor. And what you see is a series of step backs, so that there's an outdoor space. The parking garage comes out here at ground level, is partly under grade. And then above that parking deck, there's an outdoor space for the first 2 floors with balconies for the second. And then as you go up to the third, there's another step back even further from the street. So it helps alleviate the presence of the structure on the street and softens that some. And then as you go up even further, with further step backs going up. So as I mentioned, the code does permit consideration and permits the applicant to request modifications to certain requirements. The pertinent ones that we're discussing tonight would be our density measurement, which is our code measures it in square foot lot square footage per unit. So the requirement is for 1,200 square feet of lot area per unit. This development comes in just under that at 1,128 square feet per unit, for a difference of 72 square feet per unit. And then the floor area ratio requirements, I mentioned that earlier, it is a 2.5 requirement, meaning that the floor area of the building can be no more than 2.5 times the lot area. So the lot area being 13,500, you take that times 2.5, that's their maximum floor area allowed, and they come in just over that at 2.57, which equates in this instance to an additional 919 square feet of floor area. And then the building height of 40, it is for single-use buildings in the B2 district. The requirement is a maximum of 40 feet in height. They are requesting a height of 50 feet and 10.5 inches for a difference of 10 feet, 10.5 inches. I'm sure they will elaborate on this, but as shown by the side-by-side elevations, the overall building height is almost or identical to the approved building that did receive a modification for heights when it came through. Not to say that this one has to be approved, but part of these I'll go over in the site plan as well is as justification or to warrant these modifications being granted in our code, the developer is required to provide additional benefit above and beyond the code requirements. I mentioned a few of those. They are providing some additional landscaping above and beyond the minimum requirements. And I think at this point too, I'm going to go back to the site plan to explain a couple of the other items for public benefit that came out of this. The discussions from the Planning and Zoning Commission subcommittee and during that process. So the developer, again, the reason this plan is shown zoomed out to show more property to the east is that originally they had proposed to provide public sidewalk in front of it as required, and they proposed to widen it to 6 feet wide, which would be consistent with the Barclay, the previously approved project. It is a little bit wider than a standard 5 foot wide commercial sidewalk. There are sidewalks that are wider in other places in downtown, but the existing sidewalk to the east is actually 5 feet. So what the recommendation and discussion that came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission subcommittee was really recommended to extend that sidewalk widening minimally through the city-owned parking lot property. So off-site improvement of approximately, I believe, 100 feet in length of extra sidewalk off-site to widen that to improve additional pedestrian, enhanced pedestrian experience. The commission and the applicants both discussed the possibility of extending it all the way through. There is one, if you can see my cursor, there's one single family home that exists on the block, and they are seated between the public parking lot and then the first multifamily building that was built on this block. And there was discussion about and a willingness from the developer to extend that widened sidewalk through their property as well. Staff just advised or recommended that the language for that portion be completely subject to the desires of this property owner. For a couple of reasons. They, this does, sidewalk widening would require interruption, during construction. It also could likely mean a removal of a large tree that's in the tree lawn. I don't know that for certain. However, it would be very possible. And I do know for a fact, because City Hall's right across the street, they recently did improvements within the past few years to their driveway. And we just want to be cognizant of those private improvements that they've done and make sure that, we would not be forcing anything on them that they would not want. So, but the applicant did agree to pursuing that and to providing that if the homeowner wanted to widen the sidewalk out to 6 feet wide all the way to the eastern property border with that property. But at minimum, it would be extended to the eastern property line of the city-owned parking lot. The additional pedestrian improvement that the subcommittee suggested and the applicant agreed to was to provide a mid-block crossing that would be situated between the public-owned parking lot and the police department across the street. There's an existing landscape island between the two entrances to the parking lot, public parking lot, and then there is actually a sidewalk almost exactly across that goes all the way to the curb. Somebody had educated me on this. I think it was a coach or carriage approach or something, when it doesn't have the ramp and was there, but historically led to the carriages or the stagecoaches that were picking up people. Anyway, the intent would be at the applicant's cost, they would provide ADA accessible ramps on the south and northern side of Madison Avenue to provide a mid-block striped and signed pedestrian crossing. And it was discussed in the Planning Zoning Commission that this would be a good benefit with the amount of traffic, between the police department, City Hall, the parking lot across. There's also a park, as you all know, on the other corner of this. So there's a lot of activity and a lot of opportunity for people that do now cross in this location. We saw it as a positive benefit to the community that would be above and beyond the normal provisions of our code as a means for the applicant to attempt to justify the modifications requested. So some of the other items that were discussed at Planning and Zoning Commission were that I mentioned the shared drive. Currently, the driveway that was proposed and approved to serve the one property was only going to be 20 feet wide and did require a modification to be under 22 feet wide. With this building, they could increase that to a full 24-foot wide access and drive. The commission cited that as a positive thing to provide better circulation between the buildings, into the buildings. They also recommended the off-site pedestrian enhancements that I just went through explaining for public benefit. And then the commission did acknowledge and point out that the building design made a good effort and a successful effort to mitigate the appearance of the building height, since they are requesting additional building height above the 40-foot requirement. It was clear to the commission that the applicant took that into consideration in their design and took appropriate measures to lessen the appearance of that height. So the subcommittee the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval at their meeting by a vote of 9-0. And some of those conditions that I'd like to note out is they did recommend approval of the modifications explained earlier. They recommended a condition that would require the 6-foot wide exposed aggregate sidewalk on site and off site as explained, as well as the mid-block pedestrian crossing. They're also required to provide a revised lighting plan just because of the proximity of their front porch to the street. There's just some conflicts there that basically the light from their proposed lighting currently would be a little higher than our code allows out onto the street. But staff's pretty confident that we can take care of that during the permit review. And they would, because it is two separate properties, two legal lots right now, they would be required to do a consolidation plat prior to permits being issued for the construction if approved. So this is a site plan review request. It does require a public hearing, and that's why we're here tonight. After that, it would be brought back to the council for their consideration of a drafted resolution and voted on it at one meeting for that resolution. With that, I am available for questions, and I know the applicant does have representatives here as well.
Thank you. So the applicant has presentation to make?
Yes.
If we can get them on there.
If you can bring on Tyler Stevens, there we go. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's nice to see you all tonight. Jonathan did a great job of going through the bulk of the presentation, so I'll just hit some highlights, a couple things. So I'm going to share my screen with you at this point. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so you know where the property is, so we won't go through that. A lot of this started, of course, with the downtown master plan that you all approved several years ago. And this particular project is really kind of the completion of a series of projects that we've been doing down Madison Avenue, starting at the Madison 1 on the corner, the Barclay on the far corner, and now this being the third and final piece in the middle of the block. And I say final because I do want to emphasize the fact that both Savoy and I think the city and everyone sees this as the completion of the block. That's why we're talking a lot about some of the site improvements that go down the block, the pedestrian crosswalk, those types of things. And having that public parking lot in the middle, which is used quite heavily, is a good sort of buffer for all of this. So we view this as part of what the master plan is calling the missing middle housing, which are these smaller scale residential developments. They've been very popular with the buyers. The success of the market has been proven through these couple buildings that we've done, and demand is certainly there for the third building, which is why we're here tonight. This gives you an overview of the whole block that Jonathan just went over, but it shows it in color, so maybe you can see it a little bit better. You can see the first building on the corner. That's what we call the Madison here. Then on the far corner, the Barclay, which is under construction. This new building here in red. And this new building and the Barclay are very much tied together. They're very much a pair. So we'll talk about that tonight, how they work together. And then there you can see in yellow the crosswalk, as Jonathan mentioned, coming from the center of the parking lot. And there's that apron that he was talking about with the police department directly across the street. This is a 12-unit building, 24 parking spaces. That's really, as he mentioned, it's above and beyond the parking requirements, but that's really what's demanded in the marketplace. People buying these condominiums really want 2 parking spaces, so that's why we provide it that way. And you can see the scale of the footprint here very well of these 2 buildings together. They shows in terms of the mass, they're really very similar buildings in terms of massing and size. But I do, and that's also similar to the first building, but I do want to point out that all 3 buildings are unique in terms of their design, their floor plans, their unit plans. We did not want to do 3 buildings that were just repeated down the street. So they are very unique, but they go together as a set. And you'll see that here when I show the renderings. This is just by way of reminder, of course, you all know this is across the street from where we are sitting right now. We're actually, the whole team is here in the job trailer, which is where we're presenting live from tonight. This is the Madison across the street. This is the city parking lot. There's that island right in the middle where the crosswalk will be installed. You can see the house on the left that remains. These are the 2 properties in the middle. And then this is a rendering of the Barclay as it will be completed down on the far corner. So you can see how they all go together as a set on the street. Here is a blow up of the two together. You can see the shared driveway, the landscaping, the relationship of one to another. They still follow the same model, which is a garage below grade, which acts as a porch on the front level. These porches were originally chosen in the designs of these buildings as being a characteristic of Kirkwood. It's very much a porch community, so we wanted to include that, and that's really proven itself in the buyers. I can tell you that these first floor units are just as in demand as the penthouse units because of the large porches. Everybody wants that space where they can walk out, and that's all over the roof of the garage, so it helps to hide it and mitigate it, and then make the building look smaller as it goes up because it's continually stepping back. Jonathan mentioned the step backs in this building. That really came out of demand of the market as well. A lot of people wanted exterior space. That's very popular. The units have big decks. So we decided in this building, rather than doing 3 stories that are all the same with a penthouse that's different, we would do 2 stories and then 2 penthouse levels. And each of those penthouse levels has 2 units and has large exterior terraces, which is what creates the step backs that Jonathan was describing. This is a rendering of the 2 together, so you can see that as it all kind of unfolds in 3 dimensions. This building here to the right is the Barclay that's under construction right now. You see the shared drive going down between them. And then this is the proposed building here on the left. Here are the step backs that were being described. You can see these on the first floor, second floor, third floor, and then the penthouse is in the back. It switches back there, but everybody gets a really large exterior terrace, which is really what people want. That helps make the building look smaller as it shrinks back up the street. You can see we're using similar materials for the 2, similar design language and details, so that they will definitely go together, but be different designs. The other thing I wanted to point out, as Jonathan was mentioning, the code modifications, these same code modifications came up with the Madison 1, and then they came up with the Barclay as well. So it's very similar, all 3 buildings, in terms of their massing, the floor area ratio, the square footage per unit, and then the building height. This diagram shows the proposed building on the left with the Barclay on the right. As you can see, they're the same height, their floors match up. The technical dimension of this one is 1 foot taller than the Barclay. And that is because the ground, the site actually falls 1 foot as it goes from the west to the east. So it is technically 1 foot taller, but their roofs will line up and everything matches. So in the end, we think that this is a really good sort of completion to the block. This was the original intent that Savoy had when they started this development series on the block. We're proud to build it out. It's been very successful in the marketplace. All the units in the Barclay are sold already, and it hasn't even finished construction. And there's a waiting list already for this 3rd building. So it's definitely the type of product that people want. And we like it because and I think there's a reason why people like it, is it is this smaller scale, close to the street kind of development, where it feels like an extension of a large home. Each building creates its own little community. And so we present it to you tonight. I hope that you agree that this is going to be a good thing for the city of Kirkwood.
Thank you, Tyler. All right, we will now, anything else, Jonathan? Any other comments before we go on to council questions?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Excuse me.
Would you like me to stop the screen share or keep it up?
We've got the plans. Let's take it down for now, and we can always bring it back up if needed.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, we will go to the council, and our order tonight starts with Council Member Zimmer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One question, or just an observation maybe for the applicant looking at this. these were mentioned as sister buildings, and you mentioned that all three are not alike, obviously, and you've tried to make them unique. As far as the materials on the outside, are they going to be, is there going to be some uniqueness between these two buildings, especially since it's right next to the Barclay, to give some, some architectural differences as far as appearance and color?
Yes, the original building, the first one, these are nuances that I don't know if a whole lot of people notice, but it has a dark charcoal slate tile, for instance, that's down all around the base, creating this kind of dark base to it. On the Barclay, we took that slate and moved it all the way to the roof around the penthouse and introduced a dark brick instead at the base to kind of give it a different feel, different language. We like the color consistency in terms of the charcoal and the light grays and that are going on in all the buildings. So we want to keep kind of a consistent color scheme, but the placement of those materials, there are patterns in the brick, different details. Those are all different in each one and have the ability to kind of mix and match them so that you can tell that they go together, but they are different.
Okay, great. And you mentioned that the insides of the buildings are different. You specifically talked about having 2 penthouse levels. As far as the steps that go back on the corners of the front, do you offhand know the distance back that the levels go back, as far as from the street, the distance from the street to the level, and then how far back that goes, just to have an idea of what it's going to look like in real life?
Sure. I don't know the exact, foot and inch, but I can tell you that each of those steps is approximately 15 feet. That 15 feet is a good depth for those terraces as they go back. And then the other thing to mention, which as part of that, and goes back to your first question about difference between the buildings, when they do step back like that, on this building, the back of the step back is all glass. So pretty much everything facing the street, because these terraces are oriented towards the street rather than to the side, the facade of the building facing the street is mostly glass. And so what you see are these 15-foot differences, and then a glass wall, another 15 feet, another glass wall.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I think you answered my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward, you're next.
Yeah, Tyler, thanks for coming in this evening. Just maybe 1 or 2 questions for me. As you know, and it's been stated, the city's ordinances allow for us to amend projects if they warrant it. And I in order to avoid our codes and ordinances and zoning which are hard fought, I wouldn't like it to dissolve into being just a suggestion to developers or property owners. With that in mind, could you tell us what moved you to, and what was peculiar about this site that you felt it warranted us waiving the codes and ordinances we have for that site?
Certainly. These buildings, if you notice, there is a pattern that's repeated, and it's not just these buildings in Kirkwood. I've been building buildings like this for over 15 years in various municipalities. And I can just tell you that the economics of it is that what really works well, what creates a good floor plan that people want to buy, is when you have 4 units on a floor. So just think about it as a big square and everybody has a corner. That's the way these buildings lay out really well in a small scale development. So when you have 4 units on a floor and you go up 3 stories, that's a 12 unit building. And that's sort of 12 units is really the entry level in terms of making the economics work with land prices and sales prices and various things. If you get more than that, it's even better. At the Barclay, we were able to get 14 units because of the way the top worked, and we had these 2 penthouses above. And this one, because of the size of the lot, it's only 12 units. A lot of that is dictated by parking count as well. So that's really what, is the starting point of making these buildings work. And they're all that same sort of mass. When you just plan them out and then you do the math backwards and you see where you are, I mean, the fact that it's 2.57 on the FAR, where 2.5 is what's allowed, I mean, that's telling you that you're doing the right, you're in the right zone. It's right there. It is slightly over. That's simply due to the fact that parking spaces take up a certain amount of space, and to get 2 per unit, which is what the market wants, you end up with a certain size garage. So that's why it's slightly over. The height is purely a product of having the 3 stories with the penthouse, which is what, just frankly, I mean, what you need to have to make a project like this work. So it's not excessively tall. It ends up at that 50-foot mark. And I would also say that some of that is how you all measure height, which is to the peak of the roof, as opposed to like the mean of the roof, which would make it 45 in a typical municipality. This is 50, but it's all within that range. So that's really the explanation of it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Gibbons.
Jonathan, I have a question for you. One of the things that Marina said when she was here was that we don't want those monolithic skylines. And this seems like this is that. Am I correct on that?
No. So I guess I think some of the elevation that you have to consider is horizontal and not just vertical. So I think your point is you're referencing the fact that Marina said, people will always build to the maximum height, and that's what we're getting. So actually the point there was that we shouldn't be measuring by feet, right? We should be measuring by story. If we measured by story and we said it was 4-story maximum, they could come in with a 50-foot and a 55-foot and a 45-foot, and there would be variation. However, because we have chosen not to take the recommendation of measuring by stories and we keep it at feet, this is what we have. They are building to the maximum height. However, to offset the mundane or just consistent roof line, they have certainly done what they can from a horizontal perspective in design. And I know with I don't know. I would guess with Marina's architectural background, she would certainly say, I would think she would say that is working within our code. It is providing as much relief as they can.
Because it's 25% over what our code is. The other 2 modifications are insignificant, but 25%. I have a question about, Tyler, for you with regards to the tree study that you were required to do. And it looks like 4 trees are being saved, but those aren't on your property. Am I right on that?
The 4 trees, I'm not exactly sure if I know which 4 trees you're talking about.
I can verify that. That's correct. So this report shows there are removal of 2 street trees and I think 2 maybe on-site trees. The city requires them to show off-site trees that are within a certain distance so that they show that they will preserve those. So they are required to show those so that we know that they're not going to damage those off-site trees.
I guess it's, I'm just kind of emphasizing that I don't, and it has nothing to do with this project, but I don't understand why we even require a tree study when all the trees are allowed to be taken down anyway.
Yeah, it would. I think developers would certainly be glad to not provide them. I think the city in the past, we've never had a tree preservation requirement. I think the goal or the effort that it makes is it provides the information so that if there are trees that can be preserved, so it makes the developer think about those trees that the city says are important, like the project on Big Bend, right? The post oak. It provides that information to the developer and to the community to identify and have conversations about those things, to get them looking in the direction of preserving what they can and what might be in good health. The other thing is that the studies not only show the locations, but it shows the species and the condition of those trees. And those are things noted in it as well that help provide the important information of whether something's worth discussing saving or not. Yeah, I think it's a good question as to why I actually get that question fairly often. Why are we showing them if we're not required to save them? And that's the response I gave to you is the response I give to developers. So
Thank you.
So if I may, I can add just a little bit to both of those questions. I mean, certainly the tree study, knowing, well, if there's a significant tree on site, I've been involved in projects before where there was a significant tree here in Kirkwood and the project had to be redesigned around that tree. So I think that's what it gives you that information. In this particular case, we're talking about Bradford pear in one instance. These are not significant trees to be saved. And then with regards to your height question, I showed that elevation where it shows the two buildings even. And flat elevations are for architects. They're very deceptive drawings. You never see a building in flat elevation. And so when you stand on the corner of the street and you look up, you see all the variations of the roof and this various cuts and steps. It makes for a skyline that's not monolithic flat across there. If you go out and stand on the corner of Clay and Madison right now and just look up at the Barclay, it's a real good example of that because it has so many jogs in and out, even though from a flat elevation, it would look like a straight line.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Sears, anything?
I have no questions. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Dewey.
Yes, I have concerns. The good things is that it does fit in with the neighborhood, albeit that you've now changed the neighborhood, and it allows people to live downtown. Parking is available. Sidewalks are good. 12 units sounded good. But then I got to the modifications, and specifically, just like always, it's about height, and it's always about height. Not you just alone. Everybody's doing it. Not everybody's doing it, but you are almost always doing it, pushing the height. 40 feet is code. And you want nearly 11 feet more, as Liz said, 25% more. It's kind of the same old story. So I agree to a point. We can be flexible with the zoning code, but not without limit. If we don't abide by the zoning code or very close to the code we wrote, I start to wonder why we have a code. And I get it that it's a sister building and we may sort of be stuck with what there is at this point. But I really hope we start reining in on this height. I totally know you will want any other building in the neighborhood or any other Kirkwood neighborhood to push out height restrictions. This isn't going to stop now. So I'm just not real willing to discard our height restrictions over and over. That's it.
I think that's a fair comment. And the 50 feet, just in a little bit of perspective, that actually is the height. If this were a mixed use building, which could be built on the same block in the same area, then 50 feet would be the height. So it's very possible to have another building the same height right next door. Just because one's mixed use and one's all residential doesn't necessarily change the fact that they're in scale with one another. And I just go back to the economics of it again, that if And U City is a great example of this. U City changed their height restriction some years ago down to 35 feet for these types of buildings. And there's not been a single one built since. You just can't do it. You need 3.5 stories to make this kind of building work. And 3.5 stories is always going to be in that 45 to 50 foot range.
So if I may, making it work means making it work for you.
Well, making it work for the city of Kirkwood, because if it doesn't work for the developer, then they're not built, and then nobody, then the residents can't buy them.
Okay, I'm going to stop there.
Yeah,
Public hearing
please.
is not a debate back and forth. It's
Sure,
time to
sorry.
ask questions. No, I meant that.
No, I
always.
apologize.
Yeah, always. So that's when we have first reading on. When we have not first reading, when we have this table, that would be a good time for debate on that. Okay, that's it for council questions and comments. Do we have any citizens wishing to make comments on this?
There are two.
Okay.
Barbara, you should be able to talk.
Barbara, if you're talking, it shows you're muted. Barbara, if you're trying to talk, you've got yourself muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Mayor, may I also state, while we wait for Barbara to unmute, those wishing to make a public comment on this public hearing, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Why don't we go on and we'll come back to Barbara and if she unmutes and can speak. So why don't we go to the next person?
Pat Jones.
Pat, you are also on mute. All right, maybe what we can ask Barbara and Pat to do is send an email to the city clerk with the comments you would like to make where you're not able to, we're not able to hear you, and we can enter those into the record. All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak, Freddie?
Those are the only two hands raised.
Okay, all right. We have any final council comments or questions? All right, seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Our normal practice on a public hearing is to have the bill or resolution brought at our next meeting. However, in this case, I'm going to put that off. Our November 5th meeting already has high profile items on that whose applications were put in long before this one. So as of now, I plan on having the resolution for this site plan at our second meeting in November, which is November 19th. Thank you all. Now we go to public comments.
Yes, the public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the city council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the city council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the city council to the chief administrative officer or city clerk if action is needed. If anyone is wishing to make a public comment, if you would please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, all right. With that, we will move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. We will now go to our, bear with me a second, get my agenda back. Of unfinished business, of which there is none, and we will go on to new business bill 10850.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance amending the provisions of the Municipal Code Appendix A zoning, sections A-140, A-510.3, and A-1000.4 to add assisted living facility as a definition, special use in B2 General Business District, and the parking rate associated with the use.
Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Do we have a second? We need a second for discussion purposes.
Second.
All right. We have questions or comments now, and I'll go first. Just so everyone understands, tonight is the first reading of the bill for the zoning code amendment. If this passes first reading, the next meeting would have second reading, plus, assuming second reading passes, first reading of the special use permit. And then assuming that passes first reading on November 19th, we would have a resolution for the site plan. But all of that is contingent on whether the zoning code text amendment passes. So I just want to remind the council that tonight, all we are talking about is the zoning code text amendment, which takes in the B2 district. We cannot get into discussions of the special use permit or the site plan. And if council members do start drifting into that area, I will bring us all back. We have to stay on this zoning code text amendment. So with that, I will go first and be very brief and concise. I am voting no on this. This use is not what I see for our B2 business district. I see vibrant and vitality in anything we do in the B2 area, and I am all for that. I just don't see assisted living as a special use category in the B2, something that is good for Kirkwood. Even though there is still a special use that goes with it, I just don't think that's something that we want to even tacitly encourage in our B2 district. So I will be voting no. Councilmember Zimmer, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the research that I've done when considering this, looking at many documents, our downtown master plan, Envision 2035, the DPZ master plan report, and looking at all of the things they talk about: housing options, frugal retirees, singles on budget, urban professionals, affluent empty nesters. That's all from the DPZ study. The Envision 2035 talks about the B2 General Business District, and it says, commercial and retail that complement each other and attract customers from outside the district. My concern with assisted living in the B2 district is that many assisted living facilities are somewhat self-sufficient. It doesn't mean that all residents are homebound completely, but there is an element of self-sufficiency in an assisted living unit. That seems to go against what this B2 General Business District Code states in Envision 2035. It's not to say that we don't encourage age-restricted locations, because we have several of those in the city of Kirkwood. such as Jefferson Manor, Bethesda Gardens, and Concordia House. The one thing I want to note, we talk a lot about DPZ and Marina's presentations, and the fact that Marina was aware of the presentation. The DPZ doesn't say you can't have assisted living if your code allows it, but it does not mention anywhere in this master plan here about encouraging assisted living. I don't think, based on, if you look at a map of our B2 business district downtown, which could then include multiple assisted living units, had we done this before, had we changed our code many years ago to allow this, you could have this where other development has occurred that's been successful, that may change and alter the course of the B2 business district against what we're looking for as far as having a vibrant downtown. And I said this the last meeting, I question the fit of having assisted living in this district. I'm certainly open to it in other parts of Kirkwood, but in the B2 business district, I don't think it's the best fit for what we're trying to do and for what we're aiming for our future. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gibbons.
I have no comments.
Okay. Councilmember Sears.
Yes, I just want to remark that, or let everybody know that if this does pass first reading, then I intend to bring a couple of amendments before second reading that would significantly and materially change the ordinance if they were approved, if the amendments were approved. I also will state that I'm not as I don't want to say hostile, because I don't mean you guys were hostile, but I'm not as bothered by assisted living facilities near downtown, but I don't want to see them in the core of our downtown area. So, but I would like to see them allowed near downtown. So, I may be asking, completely independent of this, for some exploration and maybe some staff assistance in bringing an ordinance that's not so targeted to one specific project, but rather comprehensive in what Kirkwood needs in our whole scheme of things.
Thank you. Let's see. Councilmember Dewey.
I don't need to make comments. Everyone has made what I would have said.
All right. Did I skip over Councilmember Ward? I'm sorry.
Yes, you did, but I'm accustomed to that, Tim.
Yeah, I just got skipped last time.
Yeah, I know. I've got my list here, and if Councilmember Ward's not here, I got a little jumbled, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. And Councilmember Sears characterized me as being bothered by the amendment. I hadn't even spoken.
I didn't. You hadn't spoken yet.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to the conversation, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we have a motion and second for Bill 10850. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no.
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 All right. It looks like all voted no, so the bill does not move forward to second reading, which also means that the special use permit and the site plan, they no longer move forward. So, all right. Resolution 113, 2020.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution transferring funds in the amount of $29,645 from the contingency account to the derelict structures account, accepting the bid of Tubbs and Son Construction in the not to exceed amount of $29,645, which includes a contingency of $2,695 for single-family residence demolition and site restoration for the Public Services Department, and authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a contract.
Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, do we have any questions or comments on the resolution?
I had a question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Russ, is that money in part or in whole expected to be recovered through lien?
I'm not aware that it is. John has been involved in both of these, so if you want to touch on it, John.
Yeah, I think Bill and I would both concur that when we're involved in the demolition or work for these derelict structures, that the city does place a lien against the property. It may take us years to recover those funds, but a lien would be placed against the property. You agree, Bill?
Yeah.
Yes, I do agree.
Okay.
I have a question about the property on Saratoga. I did a little investigation, and there's some thoughts out there that maybe the city is involved with this property in some way. There's a disagreement going on. Can you address that?
I know of no disagreement, except that we went through the process of the condemnation. It's been through the process, and then we'll clear the site based after the resolution's passed. We'll clear the site, but I'm unaware of any other type of situation that exists.
And I'm confused by that comment as well. So the council understands and appreciates that before we take these steps, we send notice out to everybody that has an interest in the property. We then hold a hearing, and before we send that hearing, we send another notice out advising them that a preliminary determination has been made that that structure is derelict and it needs to be addressed. And again, we notify all interest holders. That means the person who's on the deed of trust holders, anybody that has liens against it. We also put a notice of publication in the newspaper, inviting people to attend. We then conduct a hearing, a contested hearing, in which testimony is offered by the building inspectors to the building commissioner, and the building commissioner ultimately makes the determination as to whether or not the structure is capable of being rehabilitated or if it has to be demolished. We then send notice, we draft findings of fact to conclusions, and that's sent out to a property owner. The property owner then has the right to contest that decision as well. So this is not something that occurs over weeks or even months. I can't comment on Saratoga, but my guesstimate is that it's probably close to a year process that we've gone through to get to where we are. We get frustrated by the fact that we don't want to demolish buildings. It's just the opposite of what we would like to do. We try to take every step possible to get the property up to code. And it's not just up to code. This means that it is a derelict, unsafe structure that people, it's not safe for them to continue to reside in that home. So again, the process is a long process that we have taken the time to address, we believe, all of the issues that could have arisen.
Thank you.
I would ask Councilwoman Gibbons whether, what the nature of the complaint was, because I think we ought to direct it, we ought to respond to it directly. Was the concern that the city had designs on the property, that the city wanted to acquire it, or had some financial interest in the property?
No, the concern was that someone had purchased it and wanted to renovate it and was in disagreement with the city.
Okay.
This is
All right. I
No,
just
I
want to be
just-
sure if we focus what the concern was, we can address it directly. And
Yeah, I think understanding what all has taken place, which I didn't understand. So sorry, guys, I'm still learning all these things. I think had I known that, I could have addressed it with the person that I spoke with as to what all has taken place. Does that make sense?
Do we have any other council comments or questions? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
yes.
Councilmember Dewey.
Yes.
The resolution passes. We'll move on. City council reports. Does anyone have anything to report?
I was just going to tell you that I sat in on East-West Gateway session yesterday about biking and hike and pedestrian. But anyway, they mentioned the TAP grants, and they said they got 30 grants from Missouri, requests or grant applications, and that for a total of $22 million. And that there was only one that was for community development. So that would have been our train station. I just hope that that gives us a little bit of a extra push there.
Yep.
Good, thanks for that. Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to note to the council that at least one publication, Niche, has ranked Kirkwood as 37th out of the top 50 best places to live in the country. So
Always like to see those things. Very good. Thanks for sharing that, Wallace.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to obligate you to move us up about 36 spots.
Yeah, they're only 36 off.
Yeah, they didn't rank the mayors though, did they? We might,
Clearly not.
We might
yet.
be low on that list. All right. Any other council comments? All right. Chief Administrative Officer report.
I have nothing at this time, Mayor.
All right. City Attorney report.
I have nothing, Mayor.
All right. City Clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor, I have a couple of items. The first is the report of the October 7th, 2020 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The following action was taken. The commission recommended approval of a request for a special use permit for a restaurant with outdoor seating and a site plan for a coffee shop at 132 West Monroe Avenue. After a presentation for a request for a special use permit for a motor vehicle accessory and related installation store at 538D Leffingwell Avenue, the commission recommended approval subject to the conditions contained in the October 7th, 2020 memo from City Planner to Amy Lowry. Both those items will need to be scheduled for a public hearing, which I'm coming up to is I'm reporting on the scheduled upcoming public hearings. First is next Thursday, October 22nd, 2020, which is rescheduled from August 27th, 2020, is a request for a mixed-use development in the B2 zoning district known as the James, formerly Kirkwood Flats at 426 North Kirkwood Road. And the two items from the Planning and Zoning Commission report I just read will be scheduled for November 5th, 2020. I'll read those one more time. A request for a special use permit for a restaurant with outdoor seating and a site plan for a coffee shop at 132 West Monroe Avenue, and a request for a special use permit for a motor vehicle accessory and related installation store at 538D Leffingwell Avenue. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. I want to note a couple things on that. The public hearing next Thursday starts at 6 p.m. That is the only business of the council that night, 6 p.m. Also on November 5th, I decided those public hearings will also be at 6 p.m. And then our regular meeting will start at 7. So for that night, we'll have public hearings on these two items at 6, and then council will recess and then come back and start our regular meeting at 7 o'clock on November 5th. So with that, the next regular meeting, we have the public hearing next Thursday, and then the next regular meeting is at 7 p.m. on Thursday, November 5th. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Night.
All right.
Night.
Good night.
Thank